if you don't mind, I would love to read. It's hard to pick a favorite of your writings, but I would love for whoever's listening to just get an idea of how beautiful you write as well. This one was maybe one of my first ones that I saw of yours, but vultures are holy creatures tending the dead, bowing low, barred head, whispers to cold flesh, your old name is not your king, I rename you everything. And I think that's like one of my favorites because it's taking nature, especially something that's kind of, vultures are not always viewed as kind of like the most adored creatures, or at least now, not in ancient Egypt, but and respecting their inherent nature, and just the way that you word it is really so beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, that's one of, I don't always remember where I was when I write poems, but that one I remember. I was out in the woods and near a roadside, and there was there was a collection of turkey vultures, and when they circle in the sky, that's called kettling, which I also love as a verb. And they were landing by this dead deer, and it just struck me as so solemn and sort of respectful feeling, the collection of vultures. So I'm one of those stereotypical poets that always has a notebook with me. So I remember jotting down those lines while leaning against a tree out in the woods. And it was partly informed by I had worked and volunteered at a wildlife rescue. So I got to know a few black vultures and a few turkey vultures firsthand. And it's hard to know vultures and not have a good impression of them. I mean, they're just very smart, sociable creatures that'll untie your shoe in a mischievous way, and want human interaction. And so, yeah, I love vultures. So I'm glad you picked that one to read.
Yeah, that one in particular is such a favorite of mine. I think that it's also like kind of like the underdog. I love talking about, like, because I love vultures too, and just their importance in nature and respecting that. And I feel like you have such a wonderful way of doing that and showcasing nature in how it's supposed to be, but like you said, in a whimsy way. And something about also just vultures in general, how like I love that you were like, oh, they bow their heads in respect, because like they're so important in the ecosystem, and they are just so misunderstood. And I think that dives deeper also into your book, Something in the Woods Loves You, is that depression is also misunderstood, even within ourselves, recognizing it, because I've unfortunately struggled with that as well. But being able to find and understand it, just kind of like, but also it's maybe easier to recognize outside of ourselves, and like relating to other animals.
Yeah.
So,
and I think, nature can be full of reminders too, to reject kind of easy stigmas, sort of external stories that would have us overlook the beauty of animals like vultures. And nature's a teacher too, and the idea that, all right, if you can get used to overlooking those sort of stigmas and appreciation for wildlife, then at some point, for me, there's the epiphany where it's like, all right, I can overlook those same stigmas in my own experience in terms of my struggles with mental illness.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that was like one of the questions I was going to ask you, actually, but I feel like you kind of answered it. Is like, it is easier to, I think, especially in something like animals, where you're just observing and absorbing their behaviors, and like they don't second guess or judge themselves. They're just doing what they're biologically made to do. What they were put on this earth for. And the ecosystem as a whole, there's each animal, each being plays such an important role, that it's easier to recognize that, again, outside of ourselves. And then, but I think that also with me, I feel like especially recently, it is so much easier. Like, I think when you do recognize that outside of yourself, and like forgiveness, or like other things like that. And then if it's easier to relay that back to yourself, like, well, I've forgiven something else, or I've looked at something else in a beautiful way. Why can't I just accept that for myself?
I think I think part of the trouble is, we understand the world and our place in the world through stories, and there's this prevalent false dichotomy in a lot of modern culture that separates us completely from nature, right? That we're somehow visitors or outside observers or like an alien intelligence. And so when we're out in the woods, you can feel like a visitor. So, it's like you're in a zoo and you're looking at displays. And if you completely overlook your own connection to this landscape, that this is the exact same world and natural processes through which every part of us and our minds and our bodies evolved, if you overlook that because of those same cultural narratives that aren't serving us, then it's hard to apply those lessons of love and grace and wonder to yourself and your own struggles, I think.